What's going on, guys? It's Mr. DEBT, Joe Lorick from the Money Etiquette Group, and I have to put some context behind this announcement from Floyd Mayweather that in 2020 he's coming out of retirement. All right, let's clear a few things up off the top. Floyd Mayweather is not coming out of retirement to box in a boxing ring with a welterweight or middleweight or junior middleweight champion, okay? He's not fighting Errol Spence, Pacquiao. He's not fighting anyone that's a top welterweight, okay? Floyd Mayweather is not fighting a top welterweight. In fact, he's not fighting a boxer, okay? This is for another event that's similar to the Conor McGregor Mayweather event. And it makes all the sense in the world, okay? He already announced that he's going to be working with Dana White and the UFC to put on an event. And this is major news, but not because you're a fan of boxing and UFC and these type of events. It's major news because if you're interested in investing in the UFC, meaning Endeavor Group, the timing of this event and the timing of their IPO rolling out, which should happen maybe late 2019, but likely in early 2020, is excellent. This is why I want you to pay attention. Stay with me, okay? Pay attention. Now, if you recall back in August of 2017, I think the date was August 26, 2017, you had the Mayweather versus McGregor pay-per-view fight. It was carried on Showtime when it came to the U.S. views, okay? It was carried by Showtime. That is the second highest grossing fight, pay-per-view fight of all time. Okay, whether it's MMA, boxing, it's the second highest, number one, going to Mayweather and Pacquiao in their first fight. I don't know if they're going to have a rematch, but in their first fight. That fight brought in 4.3 million pay-per-view buys. And that grossed about 600 million off of that 4.3 million buys. In the UK, I believe it did about 875,000 buys. Okay, and that's a separate number. But I want you to keep that $600 million revenue number in mind, okay? Also, when it comes to their gate, they brought in $55 million. So you have the $55 million gate, and you also have $600 million being made off the pay-per-view numbers. And I'm just talking about domestic. I'm not talking about the money that came in from the UK pay-per-view. So let's just say together that's $655 million in revenue off of one event. That doesn't include any advertising money, sponsorship deals. We're just talking about pure gate and pay-per-view dollars. Okay, again, $655 million. That's what came from the Conor McGregor versus Mayweather fight. Now, I know I'm saying a lot of numbers here, but stay with me. $655 million in revenue minimally came through for that fight in 2017. Now, if we think about the UFC, if you don't know, they're owned by the Endeavor Group. The Endeavor Group was supposed to come out with an IPO back in September of 2019, but they pulled back because of timing, because of the writer strike when it comes to their other business. They pulled back and said the timing is bad, but we're going to put it back out there. Initially, they were talking about coming out for $35 per share, and then it got reduced to maybe $27, $29 per share. And this is important to remember because there's an opportunity for you as a regular consumer to invest in the UFC via Endeavor Group. Of course, they have other businesses. They put on live events. They also have pageant events that they participate in. They also are involved in talent signings. I think the Endeavor Group roster includes The Rock. It also includes people like Stephen A. Smith with ESPN. So keep in mind, they do have a talent group in which they have signed, but that's not where most of their money comes from. In 2019, the second quarter of 2019, Endeavor Group brought in about $1 billion in revenue. Okay, $1 billion. Now, think about that event that I just spoke about in 2017. You had one event that brought in minimally $655 million. One night. We're not talking about expenses and how much it costs. I'm not talking about their profits. I'm talking about just pure revenue. You had one event that brought in $655 million minimally, and that's just from the U.S. And you're talking about a company that in the second quarter of 2019 brought in $1 billion total revenue. So think about that for a second. The Mayweather and Conor McGregor fight from 2017 earned minimally 65% of the total revenue that was earned in the second quarter of 2019 for Endeavor Group. So I want you to think about that again. 65% from one event. Now imagine what's being planned for 2020 when it comes to a Mayweather event. Mayweather Promotions and the UFC are not putting on one event and that's the end of the relationship. But even if that was the case, let's say Mayweather fights Khabib, and that fight brings in, it matches McGregor's fight. Okay, let's say it brings in that same $655 million minimally between the gate and US pay-per-views. You're talking about, again, 65% of Endeavor Group's revenue could be made through one event. And we know it's going to make more money than that. So think about that as an investment opportunity. A lot of us, yes, we watch pay-per-views. We're thinking about the excitement. Man, I don't want Mayweather to come back and fight, but I'll pay for the event just to see if he can beat Khabib, just to see if he can handle this one big fight. Look, this is not about one big fight. If you've watched and paid attention to what Mayweather Promotions has been doing over the past year, they're putting together pay-per-views and events with other fighters that are just huge on social media. I mean, you had a social media fight fill up a stadium. Okay, we're talking about 13,000 seats or so. Fill up a stadium and also sell pay-per-view buys just off of popularity. Those are the type of events that are going to be put on between Mayweather Promotions and the UFC. And here's some other news to pay attention to when it comes to the UFC and what moves they're making. Just recently, Endeavor Group and the UFC signed a deal with ESPN for $1.5 billion over 5 years, where they're going to carry their prelim fights on ESPN. So that's going to be ESPN, the channel, ESPN Plus. I'm saying that when it comes to streaming, okay, when it comes to streaming, they have an agreement with ESPN. They have that relationship. Disney Plus, ESPN, put it all together, okay? You also have the streaming app for the UFC. I'm talking about UFC Fight Pass, which is going to relaunch December the 4th. Now, they're talking about it's going to relaunch and they're going to do pay-per-view events through this streaming service. So don't expect any Mayweather and UFC fight necessarily to go through Showtime this time. They can make a lot more money by putting it through their own streaming app. Similar to, you've seen DAZN and you've seen all of these other streaming apps that run fights like the Canelo fight. The UFC has been paying attention and they're adapting. So that's why they're relaunching their Fight Pass app and their Fight Pass program. Because think about it, without a doubt, they wouldn't have to use Showtime or another platform if they could just use their own platform and make more money from it. That's the goal. So look at the timing. We have Mayweather announcing that in 2020, he's coming back. But again, that's going to be the beginning of sparking multiple events and fights with an agreement between the UFC and Mayweather Promotions. And Mayweather Promotions have proven one thing. They're able to put on an event even if it doesn't involve Floyd Mayweather directly. But the first one will, because you're talking about a fight that could generate up to $1 billion if it's done correctly. They're going to be using a platform of their own. So instead of using Showtime, they can use their own platform and they can partner with ESPN because they've already signed a deal with ESPN. So the undercards, and we're talking about Gervonta Davis, we're talking about some of the most popular fighters on Mayweather Promotions, but also in the UFC, being on one card where ESPN can broadcast the prelims for free, hyping up the event even more. When you had Mayweather and Conor McGregor in 2017, it was gone through Showtime, but we're in a different world. We're in a streaming world in 2020. So we're talking about the UFC being able to stream through their own platform and partner with ESPN to make this the biggest pay-per-view event of all time when it comes to revenue. I'm not talking about views and buys. I'm talking about revenue. All that aligns with an opportunity, at least hopefully, to invest in Endeavor Group through their IPO. Now, will their IPO drop in time? I think so. I think this writer strike, I think it's going to be worked out before the end of 2019, maybe by the beginning of 2020, because it's in their best interest to kind of get rid of that and to move forward. But even if it doesn't, I believe that Endeavor Group will drop their IPO regardless. So when this happens, again, I'm screaming this as loud as I can. There's an opportunity for you not to just be a consumer on the side of a big event when it comes to the UFC, when it comes to Mayweather Promotions. It's an opportunity, more than likely, for you to make money off of that event. Because if Mayweather and McGregor brought in $655 million in revenue, minimally, okay, and if the UFC, let's just say for the second quarter of 2019, brought in $1 billion, if they can bring in from one event so much money And not to mention because of timing and because of streaming, this can be bigger than it was before. I see money all over that. And here's another thing. When it comes to money, you never bet against Mayweather. You don't bet against MoneyMay when it comes to making money. I'm not talking about him winning a fight. I'm not talking about him being the greatest of all time when it comes to boxing. I'm talking strictly when it comes to making money and revenue. When you bet with this event, if you have the opportunity, if we all get the opportunity to invest in Endeavor Group through their IPO, and it drops before a Mayweather and Khabib or Mayweather and whoever pay-per-view, which again will be streamed through Endeavor Streaming, so their own platform and in association and partnership with ESPN. It's a no-brainer, guys. It's a moneymaker. And not to mention the formula will be set up for the future fights. So it won't be a one-off. This is how things will work in 2020, 2021. And there will be other big events throughout the year because they have a formula and they'll know how to make money from it. And I'm sorry, Showtime, I know you want to be a part of it, but I doubt that Showtime will be a part of this one. And if they do, they'll just be getting a cut just to make it bigger. If Showtime's involved in this event, it's just that much bigger. So what do you guys think? I think it's an excellent investment opportunity. Pay attention to Endeavor Group. Yes, they did not release their IPO in September, but this is better. When they were announcing this in September, they didn't have an agreement with Mayweather Promotions. They didn't have Mayweather talking about he's coming out of retirement in 2020. Now you have that. So you have a guaranteed huge event, and not to mention there will be more events. And remember who else is on Mayweather Promotions? Gervonta Davis. He is a big fighter right now. His name is huge. He knocks people out. Imagine a fight between Gervonta and maybe one of the top UFC fighters. And maybe he steps in an MMA ring because he's newer. Floyd won't do that, but maybe Gervonta will. Maybe if someone says, Gervonta, you can make $300 million to step in the UFC octagon, maybe that fight happens. And you're talking about a knockout king. You're talking about someone at the height of their career when it comes to knocking people out. Let me know what you think in the comment section. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. We'll be following this situation throughout the next year. I also talk about other things with financial literacy, IPOs. I talk about stocks. I talk about opportunities to help teach your kids about money and banking and budgeting. Everything when it comes to finances is available on this channel. So make sure you pay attention and make sure you subscribe.